Hello, everybody. This is Anna Karenina by Leo Tolstoy. Part 3, Chapter 29. The carrying out of Levin's plan offered many difficulties, but he persevered, though he recognized that the results obtained would not be in proportion to the labor involved. One of the principal obstacles which met him was the fact that his estate was already in running order, and that it was impossible to come to a sudden stop and begin anew. He had to wind the machines up by degrees. When he reached home in the evening, he summoned his prikashchik and explained to him his plans. The prikashchik received with undisguised satisfaction all the details of the scheme so far as they showed that all that had been done hitherto was absurd and unproductive. The prikashchik declared that he had long ago told him so, but that his words had not been heard. But when Levin proposed to share the profits of the estate with the laborers on the basis of an association, the prikashchik put on an expression of melancholy and immediately began to speak of the necessity of bringing in the last sheaves of wheat and commencing the second plowing. And Levin felt that now was not a propitious time. On conversing with the mushiks about his project of dividing with them the products of the earth, he quickly perceived that they were too much occupied with their daily tasks to comprehend the advantages and disadvantages of his enterprise. A king mujik, even the skotnik, to whom Levin proposed to share in the profits of the cattle, seemed to comprehend and to approve. But every time that Levin went on to speak of the advantages that would result, Ivan's face grew troubled, and without waiting to hear Levin out, he would hurry off to attend to some work that could not be postponed, either to pitch the hay from the pens, or to draw water, or to clear away the manure. The chief obstacle consisted in the inveterate distrust of the peasants, who would not believe that a proprietor could have any other aim than to despoil them. Whatever reasoning he might employ to convince them, they still held to their conviction that his real purpose was hidden. They, on their side, made many words, but they carefully guarded against telling what they intended to do. Levin remembered the angry proprietor when the peasants demanded, as the first and indispensable condition of their new arrangements, that they should never be bound to any of the new agricultural methods or to use the improved tools. They agreed that the new-fashioned plow worked better, that the weed extirpator was more successful, but they invented 1,000 excuses not to make use of them. Whatever regret he felt at giving up processes, the advantage of which were self-evident, he let them have their way, and by autumn the new arrangement was in working order, or at least seemed to be. At first, Levin intended to give up his whole domain to the new association of workmen, but very soon he found that this was impractical, and he made up his mind to limit it to the cattle, the garden, the kitchen garden, the hayfields, and some lands, situated at some distance, which for 8 years past had been lying fallow. Ivan, the keen skotnik, formed an association composed of members of his family, and took charge of the cattle yard. The new field was taken by a shrewd carpenter, Fyodor Rezunov, who joined with him 7 families of mushiks, and the mushiks, Suraev, entered into the same arrangements for superintending the gardens. It was true that matters were not carried on in the cattle yard any better than before, and that Ivan was obstinate in his mistakes about feeding the cows and churning the butter, and found it impossible to comprehend or take any interest in the fact that henceforth his wages would be represented by a proportion of the profits of the association. It was true that Rezunov did not give the field a second plowing, as he had been advised to do. It was true that the mushiks of his company, although they had agreed to take this work under the new conditions, called this land, not common land, but shared land, and that Rezunov did not complete the barn that he had agreed to build before winter. It was true that Shuraev tried to give away the products of the garden to the other mushiks, seeming to be under the impression that the land had been given to him. But in spite of all these drawbacks, Levin still persevered, hoping to be able to show his associates at the end of the year that the new order of things could bring excellent results. All these changes in the administration of the estate, together with his work in the library on his new book, so filled his time that he scarcely went out, even to hunt. Towards the end of August, the Oblonskys returned to Moscow, as he learned through the man that brought back the saddle. The memory of his rudeness in not answering Darya Alexandrovna's note or going to call upon them caused him a pang of shame, and he felt that his conduct towards Sviazhsky had not been much more gentlemanly. But he was too busy to have time to think of his remorse. His reading absorbed him. He finished the books which Sviazhsky loaned him, and others on political economy and socialism which he sent for. Among the writers on political economy, Mill, which he studied first, interested him, but seemed to him to offer nothing applicable to the agrarian situation in Russia. Modern socialism did not satisfy him any more. Either they were beautiful but impractical fancies, such as he dreamed when he was a student, or modifications of that situation of things applicable to Europe, but offering no solution for the agrarian question in Russia. Political economy said that the laws in which the happiness of Europe was developed and would develop were universal and fixed. Socialistic teaching said that progress according to these laws would lead to destruction, but there was nothing that he could find that cast the light on the means of leading him and all of Russian mushkiks and agriculturalists with their millions of hands and of desyatins to more successful methods of reaching prosperity. As he went on reading, it occurred to him that it would be an advantage to go abroad and study on the spot certain special questions, so as not to always be sent from one authority to another, to Kaufmann, to Lebois, to Michelet. He saw clearly now that Kaufmann and Michelet could not answer these questions for him. He knew what he wanted. He saw that Russia possessed an admirable soil and admirable workmen, and that in certain cases, as with the mushkik by the highway, the land and the workmen could produce abundantly, but that, when capital was spent upon them in the European manner, they produced scarcely anything. This contrast could not be the result of chance. The Russian people, he thought, destined to colonize these immense spaces, cling to their traditions and to their own ways and customs. And who is to say that they are wrong? And he wanted to demonstrate this theory in his book and put it into practice on his land.